The sun was setting over the tarmac, casting an amber glow on the airplane as it prepared for takeoff. Inside the cockpit, Captain Jordan Carter, one of the airline's most trusted pilots, sat at the helm, ready for another routine flight. But what should have been a normal day quickly spirals into something that would change his career and his life forever. Tina, a young flight attendant, made an accusation that no one saw coming. But what happens next? The truth will leave you speechless. The tense moment in the airplane as Tina makes a shocking report about the captain, her accusation spreading through the crew like wildfire. Before we dive into this shocking story, let us know where in the world you're watching from. Drop a comment below, and make sure to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss the explosive twist in this story. It was a crisp Tuesday morning at LAX, one of the busiest airports in the country. The air was filled with the sounds of rolling luggage, footsteps, and the faint hum of airplane engines. But for Captain Jordan Carter, it was just another day at the office. Jordan, a highly respected black pilot, had been flying for years, steadily climbing the ranks, respected by his peers, and loved by his passengers. He was proud of his career, his professionalism, and most of all, his ability to remain calm in any situation. However, this flight was different. He stepped into the cockpit, his uniform crisp and polished, feeling the weight of the day's mission settle over him. Today, he was piloting a transcontinental flight from Los Angeles to New York. It wasn't his first time, but today, something felt off. The usual calm that he carried into every flight seemed to be clouded by a subtle tension. Meanwhile, at the front of the plane, Tina Williams, a young, ambitious flight attendant, was preparing for her service. Tina had only been with the airline for a couple of years, but had already proven herself to be a rising star among the crew. However, today, Tina's nerves were on edge. There had been an incident before the flight that she couldn't quite shake off, one that involved the captain. Tina had been in the crew room when she overheard a few other flight attendants gossiping about Jordan. They mentioned his calm demeanor in a stressful situation, how he had handled an emergency landing the year before, and how everyone respected him. But there were whispers too, whispers about how some passengers felt uncomfortable around him. It was just idle chatter, but something about it gnawed at Tina, unsettling her. As she made her way down the aisle to the cockpit to confirm the final details with Jordan before takeoff, she felt a tightness in her chest. Could this man really be the model of professionalism everyone claimed he was? She wasn't sure. The tension in the air was palpable as Tina entered the cockpit to brief the captain. Jordan, as always, flashed his signature warm smile, greeting her with his calm, collected energy. "Morning, Tina. How are we feeling today?" Jordan asked, his deep voice soothing. Tina hesitated, but only for a moment. "I'm good, Captain. Just a little tired," she said, brushing off her doubts. Jordan nodded and went over the flight plan with her, discussing the weather conditions, the expected altitude, and the flight time. But Tina couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't Jordan himself. He was always kind, always professional. It was the gossip that had taken root in her mind, making her second-guess everything she thought she knew about him. As the plane began to taxi, Tina moved down the aisle, starting her cabin checks. There was still a doubt in her mind, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A seed of suspicion had been planted, and no matter how hard she tried to shake it off, it continued to grow. At 10,000 feet, the plane was cruising smoothly. Tina's duties took her all over the cabin, helping passengers, making sure everyone was settled in for the long flight ahead. But as the flight progressed, she couldn't ignore the strange behavior of the captain that kept bubbling to the surface. Throughout the flight, Jordan seemed a bit off, a little more distant than usual. He wasn't speaking to the crew as he normally would, and though Tina had seen him handle even worse situations without breaking a sweat, something about the way he handled a minor turbulence seemed overly cautious. His eyes were focused on the instruments, but his hands were gripping the controls tightly, as if his mind was elsewhere. Tina, despite her gut telling her to mind her own business, couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. Her doubts kept building, and as the hours passed, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was brewing behind the cockpit door. At this point, Tina did what she thought was a simple task. Just to make sure everything was running smoothly, she knocked on the cockpit door and asked if the captain needed anything. Jordan's calm demeanor quickly shattered when he snapped, "Just focus on the passengers, Tina." His voice was firm, almost too firm, and it left her standing frozen in the narrow aisle. The words echoed in her mind as she made her way back to the front. Something inside of her snapped, a sense of betrayal, confusion, and a decision to trust the story she'd overheard earlier. Her suspicion was about to lead her to a terrible decision. As the hours ticked by, Tina's frustration festered. She was now fully convinced that something was wrong with Jordan. Maybe it was the way he didn't respond to the usual turbulence with his usual calm, or maybe it was something more subtle. Finally, as the plane descended toward New York, Tina's mind made up. She was going to report him. She had to. At landing, Tina's eyes darted nervously as she walked past the cockpit, now convinced that this man, this Captain Jordan Carter, was hiding something. She couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be done before he caused something catastrophic. It wasn't just the whispers anymore. Her mind was convinced. She quickly ran to her supervisor and voiced her concerns about the pilot. Without thinking, she accused him of being unfit to fly. Tina said she had doubts about his professionalism during the flight. The words rushed out of her mouth without a second thought, and that was all it took. The flight landed smoothly in New York, and passengers began filing out of the plane, completely unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. The crew worked efficiently, their professionalism hiding the tension that had been quietly building in the cockpit and throughout the cabin. Tina, her heart pounding in her chest, moved quickly toward her supervisor, desperate to get her accusation out of the way. She didn't want to wait. The thoughts swirling in her mind had already solidified. Captain Jordan Carter was hiding something. There was something off about the way he had handled things, something she couldn't ignore anymore. The supervisor, Mr. Williams, was in the midst of overseeing the disembarking passengers when Tina approached him, her voice low but urgent. "Mr. Williams, I need to speak with you," she said, her face tense. Williams, who had been with the airline for years, knew Tina well. He had always admired her professionalism and dedication, but this sudden urgency caught him off guard. "What is it, Tina? Something wrong?" She hesitated for a moment, unsure how to frame her concern without sounding too accusatory. The words hung in her throat for a beat longer than she would have liked. Finally she spoke, the tension palpable in her voice. "It's Captain Carter. I think he's unfit to fly. He wasn't acting right during the flight. There were moments where he seemed distracted, and when the turbulence hit, he wasn't as calm as usual. I think something's off with him, and I need to report it." Mr. Williams was taken aback. He hadn't noticed anything unusual during the flight, and he knew Jordan as one of the airline's best pilots. His expression shifted from concern to confusion. "Tina, are you sure? I've worked with Jordan for years, and I've never had a problem with him." Tina pressed on, her mind racing. "I'm positive, sir. I've been flying for a while, and I know when something isn't right. I'm just trying to protect the safety of everyone on board." Williams paused, considering her words carefully. He didn't want to dismiss Tina's concern, but he also didn't want to act on unfounded accusations. "All right, Tina, let me talk to the crew, but you need to understand that any accusations like this could lead to a serious investigation. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" Tina nodded, her hands shaking, but her resolve never wavered. She wasn't about to back down. She needed to do what was right, and in her mind, this was the only option. Back in the cockpit, Jordan sat in the pilot's seat, staring out at the bustling airport ground crew below. He had been flying for years, decades even, and every instinct told him that something was not right. He had noticed the strange behavior of his fellow crew members during the flight, particularly Tina. Her eyes had lingered on him longer than usual, and her demeanor had seemed increasingly uncomfortable as the flight progressed. Jordan had been sharp, professional, and fully focused on the flight. He knew how to handle turbulence and other in-flight anomalies, but something about the tension in the air, something about Tina's strange energy, had unsettled him. He tried to shake it off, thinking it was just nerves. But now, as he sat in the cockpit, his gut told him that something was coming. His suspicions were confirmed when Mr. Williams walked in with a serious expression on his face. The supervisor took a seat beside Jordan, his hands folded, his brow furrowed in thought. "Jordan, we need to talk," Williams began, his voice calm but carrying an edge of concern. "Tina's made an accusation. She claims you weren't fit to fly today. She says you were distracted and not handling the flight well." Jordan froze, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Tina, one of the most trusted flight attendants, was accusing him. He had been calm, composed, doing his job like he always did. "What?" he said, his voice tight with disbelief. "What are you talking about? I've never had an issue with Tina." Williams sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "She says you were distracted. She says you seemed off during the turbulence, and she's concerned about your mental state. She wants this reported, Jordan." Jordan's eyes narrowed. He felt a surge of frustration, but he kept it in check. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about clearing his name. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Tina had always been professional, but now, everything seemed to be crumbling in a matter of minutes. "I've been flying this route for years," he said, his voice calm but filled with rising tension. "I've handled worse turbulence than that. I'm fine, Williams. I don't know where she's coming from with this, but it's not true. Williams nodded, but he could see the frustration building in Jordan. I understand, but we have to take this seriously. Tina has made a formal complaint. You know how it works. This could be a serious issue for both you and the airline. Jordan leaned back in his seat, his mind working furiously. This didn't make sense. Tina had no reason to accuse him. She had been a model flight attendant, always dedicated to her work. But what if there was something else? Was it possible that Tina had misunderstood something during the flight? Or was there something more sinister happening here? Jordan's thoughts raced as the weight of the situation settled in. If this accusation went further, it could end his career. He had worked too hard to get here, to let it all slip away in an instant. The atmosphere in the cockpit was thick with tension. Jordan's mind raced as he tried to process the bombshell that Williams had just dropped on him. Tina's accusation wasn't just about him being distracted. It was about his fitness to fly, and that was something he couldn't afford to let slide. His career, everything he'd worked for, was hanging in the balance, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. Williams' gaze softened slightly, sensing Jordan's frustration. He wasn't here to accuse him, just to relay the situation. Look, Jordan, he said, his voice more sympathetic now. I know this seems sudden, but it's part of the procedure. I'll be in touch with the higher-ups, but you need to know this is serious. Tina's a good flight attendant, and she's been here longer than anyone. She wouldn't make this up without reason. Jordan stood up, pacing in the confined space of the cockpit. His mind was a storm of questions and confusion. He couldn't fathom why Tina, a trusted colleague, someone he had worked with countless times before, would make such a serious accusation. He needed to know why. He needed to confront her. I need to speak to her, Jordan muttered under his breath, almost to himself. But it was loud enough for Williams to hear. Jordan, I can't have you going off like this, Williams said, placing a hand on Jordan's shoulder. I understand you're upset, but we need to handle this carefully. Tina's already made her report, and now the airline has to follow through. The anger swelled inside Jordan, but he forced it down, taking a deep breath. This wasn't the time to lose control. He had to find a way to prove his innocence. He couldn't let this accusation go unanswered. I understand, but this doesn't make sense, Jordan replied, his voice steady, though the frustration was still clear. I've flown over 500 flights without a single issue. She can't just pull something like this out of nowhere. Williams nodded, his face serious. I get it, Jordan, and I'll be here for you. But I've got to make sure we handle this the right way. Stay calm, all right? Jordan nodded reluctantly, and Williams left the cockpit, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The tension in the air felt unbearable as Jordan stared out of the cockpit window. Below him, the city of New York sprawled out, its lights twinkling like stars in the dark sky. But the beauty of it all was lost on him. His mind was consumed with the accusation, with the unsettling feeling that something wasn't quite right. Who could have planted the seed of doubt? Hours later, Jordan was on his way to the hotel after the flight had landed. His mood was heavy, the thoughts swirling in his mind relentless. His usual calm demeanor was nowhere to be found. He couldn't understand why Tina had done this. She was supposed to be a colleague, someone he could trust, but instead she had made a serious accusation that was now being treated like fact. As he sat in the back of the taxi, staring out the window, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Tina. I need to talk to you, it read. I didn't want it to go this far. Please meet me. Jordan felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, some clarity. He had to meet her face to face, to figure out what had happened. His instincts told him something was wrong. He had to hear it from her. He texted back quickly. I'm at the hotel. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. At the hotel, Jordan paced the room, his mind running in circles. What could Tina possibly say to justify what she had done? Was it a misunderstanding? Or was there something else going on? Something deeper that he hadn't seen? He barely had time to think when there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Tina standing in front of him, her face pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and anxiety. Tina, we need to talk, Jordan said, his voice low and controlled, but the frustration was evident in his gaze. What's going on? Why did you accuse me? Tina swallowed hard, avoiding his gaze. She hesitated for a moment before stepping into the room. Jordan, I didn't mean for it to escalate like this. It's just, I don't know, I just felt something was off. I've been hearing things, and it clouded my judgment. Jordan stepped closer, his frustration mounting. What things? What are you talking about? I overheard some of the crew, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They were talking about you, about how you've handled things on past flights. They made me question whether you were really fit for this. Jordan's heart sank. It wasn't Tina's judgment that had caused the trouble. It was the rumors. The same rumors that had been whispered behind closed doors. A few careless words had planted a seed of doubt in her mind, and now it had grown into something dangerous. "So you decided to accuse me of being unfit?" Jordan asked, his voice cold now. "Because of some gossip?" Tina nodded, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I was wrong, Jordan. I let my emotions and those rumors get to me. I should have known better. But now I don't know how to fix this." Jordan took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. "You don't know how to fix it?" "Tina, this accusation could end my career. You don't just get to take it back, you've damaged me." Tina stepped forward, her eyes brimming with guilt. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I was confused, and I didn't think. You didn't think about how this would ruin everything for me." Jordan's voice rose. "You've caused a mess, Tina, and now I have to clean it up." The tension in the hotel room was palpable. Jordan stood there, his jaw clenched, trying to process everything that had just been revealed. Tina had broken his trust, and now he was left with the fallout. His career, his reputation, everything he had worked so hard to build was now hanging by a thread. The thought of being dragged through an investigation, his name sullied by lies and accusations, made his blood boil. Tina stood in front of him, her face flushed with guilt. She was clearly remorseful, but Jordan couldn't help but feel the weight of what she had done. The rumors she had overheard, the whispers of others in the crew, had clouded her judgment, and now it was too late to undo the damage. "I don't know what to say," Tina whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting everyone by speaking up, but I was wrong. I made a huge mistake." Jordan shook his head. "You should have come to me first, Tina. If you had doubts, why didn't you just ask me about it? Why did you let rumors dictate your actions? You've accused me of something serious, something that could end my career, my life. And for what? A misunderstanding." Tina opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. She knew he was right. She had acted out of fear, out of doubt, and now she had caused irreparable damage. "I didn't want it to go this far," Tina said softly. "But I felt like I had no choice. You're the captain. You're supposed to be in control. But I saw you struggling, and those rumors, I thought they might be true." Jordan took a step back, his mind racing. Struggling? He hadn't been struggling. He'd been doing his job, the same job he had done for years. But those rumors had made Tina doubt him, and that doubt had snowballed into something much worse. "Are you saying you don't trust me?" Jordan asked, his voice calm but cutting through the air like a knife. "Is that what this is about?" Tina's gaze dropped to the floor, the weight of the accusation hanging in the silence between them. "No, I trust you," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know who to trust anymore." Jordan sighed heavily, his anger now replaced with an overwhelming sense of disappointment. He had spent years working to earn the trust of everyone around him, and now in a matter of minutes, that trust had been shattered by a single accusation. "I've worked for this airline my whole life," Jordan said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been through the toughest flights, the most difficult conditions, and I've always come out on top. But now, all of that is in question. Because you didn't trust me. Because you thought that gossip was worth more than my reputation." The room fell silent as Jordan's words settled. Tina looked up, her eyes wide with regret. She could feel the sting of her actions, the reality of what she had done, and it was almost unbearable. "I'm so sorry, Jordan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean to ruin everything. I swear, I thought I was doing the right thing." Jordan closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. He wasn't sure how to feel. He wanted to be angry, to lash out, but he knew that would only make things worse. He had to take control of this situation, but he also knew he couldn't do it alone. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Jordan said, his voice softer now. "I'm going to have to face the consequences of your actions. But I'm not going to let this ruin me. I'm going to fight for my career, for my reputation, and I won't let anyone tarnish what I've worked for." Tina nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. If you need me to help clear things up, I'll do it. I'll go to HR, the union, whatever it takes." Jordan's eyes softened. He didn't know if it was enough, but he knew one thing: this wasn't over. He wasn't going to let this accusation define him. He was going to clear his name, no matter the cost. "Let's talk to the higher-ups," Jordan said firmly, his resolve hardening. "Let's get this over with." The next day, Jordan found himself in a conference room, sitting across from the airline's HR representative, the union representative, and Tina. The tension in the room was palpable, the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone. Tina had already apologized to the HR team, but it didn't change the fact that an accusation had been made. Jordan's career was still in jeopardy. The HR representative, A middle-aged woman with a stern expression sat across from him, flipping through a folder. She adjusted her glasses and then looked at Jordan. "Captain Carter, we've reviewed the situation, and we take these kinds of accusations seriously. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us, but this is a serious matter. We need to hear your side of the story." Jordan leaned forward, his posture stiff but his tone measured. "I've been with this airline for over a decade. I've never had an issue, not once, and I won't stand by while false accusations are made against me. I've done nothing wrong. I don't know where this came from, but it has to stop." Tina, sitting to the side, seemed uncomfortable but determined. She spoke up, her voice shaky. "I was wrong. I made a mistake. I didn't trust him, and I listened to rumors, but I'm here to admit that I was wrong, and I'm ready to face the consequences for my actions." The room was silent for a long moment as the HR representative considered the situation. Finally, she spoke. "We'll begin the investigation into the matter, and we'll keep you both informed. This is a serious situation, but we'll make sure to get to the bottom of it." Days passed after the intense meeting with HR. The investigation into the accusation against Captain Jordan Carter was officially underway. He found himself caught in a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and endless discussions about his future with the airline. Every interaction felt like it could tip the scales. Either his career would be ruined, or his name would be cleared. But one thing had become clear. Jordan wasn't just fighting for his job. He was fighting for his dignity, for everything he had worked for over the years. As the days wore on, the flight attendants and crew members Jordan had worked alongside began to rally behind him. Many knew him as a calm, reliable pilot who had earned their respect through years of professionalism. The rumors Tina had heard, the whispers of doubt, suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of the overwhelming support Jordan received from his colleagues. One afternoon, a meeting with HR proved to be the turning point. Jordan walked into the room, knowing that the truth was on his side, but still unsure of what the final decision would be. Tina was already seated across from the HR representative, her eyes red from crying. She had apologized again and again, but her words couldn't undo the damage she had caused. Jordan was ready. The HR representative, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Green, began the meeting by addressing the elephant in the room. "Captain Carter," Patricia started, "we've completed our investigation. We've spoken with the crew, reviewed the flight logs, and we've also taken a look at your records. Everything points to one conclusion. The accusation against you was completely unfounded. There was no cause for concern regarding your ability to fly or handle the flight." Jordan's chest tightened as the words hit him. It was over. The weight of the last few days lifted from his shoulders. The truth had prevailed. Tina's eyes widened, and she looked down, unable to meet his gaze. She had done all she could to make things right, but the damage was done. The airline had decided to investigate her actions, just as seriously as they had investigated the accusation. While Tina had admitted her mistake, the reality of her false report still had consequences. Patricia Green continued, her voice calm but resolute. "As a result of the investigation, Captain Carter, we will be clearing your name. You are fully reinstated as a pilot, and we will be handling this matter with Tina separately. The rumors and doubts that surrounded you during this investigation have been proven to be baseless, and we regret that you had to endure this unnecessary situation." Jordan exhaled deeply, his hands clenched in his lap. He had won, but it wasn't a victory without cost. He knew that Tina's false accusation had come from a place of doubt, but that didn't make it any less painful. Her actions had nearly destroyed everything he had built, and now he would have to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Tina, on the other hand, remained quiet. She had never intended for things to spiral out of control, but the whispers of other crew members had led her to believe the worst. She now faced the consequences of her own actions. Whether or not she kept her job was out of Jordan's hands, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. He had always considered her a colleague, a teammate, and now their professional relationship would never be the same. "I'm sorry, Jordan," Tina said, her voice barely a whisper. She reached for her tissues, her hands trembling. "I never wanted this to happen. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I was wrong. I made a horrible mistake, and I'll accept whatever happens next." Jordan nodded, his face hardening slightly. "You've done what you can to fix it, but there's a lot more to be done." He paused, his words deliberate. "I'll never forget how quickly you believed those rumors, Tina. We were colleagues. I trusted you, and you took that trust and threw it away." Tina's face fell as Jordan's words hit her like a slap across the face. She had known she would have to face the consequences, but hearing it from someone she respected stung in a way she hadn't expected. "You can't undo the harm you've caused, but I hope you take this as a lesson," Jordan continued, his voice steady but edged with disappointment. "This isn't just about me, it's about trust, about doing the right thing. Never again should a rumor or a doubt cloud your judgment. You should know better than to act out of fear." Patricia Green sat silently, taking in the exchange. It was clear the damage had been done, but she could see that Jordan was trying to navigate through his own feelings, doing his best to be fair, even though the betrayal cut deep. "Captain Carter," Patricia said after a moment of silence, "we appreciate your patience and your professionalism throughout this ordeal. You're a credit to this airline, and we'll make sure that this type of incident doesn't repeat itself in the future." As the meeting came to a close, Jordan stood up, his posture straight and his eyes focused. There was a finality in his movements, a sense that this chapter was coming to an end, but his resolve was stronger than ever. "I'll be in touch about my next assignment," Jordan said, nodding curtly before walking toward the door. "Thank you for handling this with the seriousness it deserved." As he left the room, Tina sat in silence, the weight of her actions pressing down on her shoulders. She had lost something far more valuable than her job. She had lost trust, and that was something she might never regain.